But more importantly, who convinced you that thinking for yourself is not important anymore? Why do you think that? Hey friends, what's up? Good news, my radiator is off, so we don't have to deal with that. And I figured, let's just do a little let's chat. As a vehicle, I want to, I think, move away from exclusively or almost exclusively making videos about how I look, because other stuff is happening in life, but just in general also, like, less having to do with necessarily me as an individual and what's going on with me, and more so about things that I think are important in the world, which I always incorporate. But have you looked outside? My God. So in this video, I'm going to talk about, things and stuff, thoughts that I've been having. And also, tell y'all a little bit about what I'm doing beauty-wise. Because here's the thing, right? If I completely move away from making videos about stuff I'm already doing, right? Like, I have to get dressed anyways. I mean, get ready with me to sit in my house and read a book. I was gonna go for a walk, but then I exercised at home instead. So if I don't do that, then I have to move into, like, I think the account is Sid's Internet. I'll put the link down below. That person does a really good job with some of the topics that I want to talk about, like internet safety. But that's a lot, like B-roll and stuff, that's a lot. So we'll see what I come up with. One thing I will say, and this is like kind of related to not wanting to just talk about my appearance, I recognized that I don't care as much as I thought I did, right? Something very interesting has happened over the past couple years, which, for one, my appearance has drastically changed, but then also because of different stuff going on in life, like with my health, switching careers, relationships changing, it's made me weigh what my appearance even means to me. And I was talking to my husband about this couple weeks ago, because I was like, I used to really like think of myself as a vain person, and I didn't think it was a bad thing, but I feel like I just don't care about my appearance in the same way. And my husband was like, no, you don't. I really never have, quite as much as some other people do, but really in the past like year. So something interesting that's happened though, which I think is good for the health of my hair, is that all that like sectioning and slicking and blah, blah, I don't want to do all that, And I realized that if I don't, I get this like really nice thick ponytail at the back of my head instead of like a, one that's like a lot more neat or whatever. And then it's easier to, when I'm like showering and stuff, like when I'm washing my hair, it's much easier to detangle it as close as it can be to the natural curls as possible. So I also wanted to make this video now because I am starting a new job soon. And so I wanted to do it while I still have the time. I'm gonna be working in a library setting. Again, always the goal. That is my career now. I've successfully, this is my second position in a library, and apart from like internships and stuff when I was in college. And so I think I can safely say that I have switched careers from like nonprofit and education world to library and information science. I finished my year. I finished the school year. With a 4.0. And that's what qualifies me to talk about this stuff, right? Is that I'm not just, even if it was just like a hobby for me to look up like internet culture and stuff like that, as long as I said, hey, these are the sources I am using, that would be fine. But now I can say, like, I'm an accomplished graduate student in library and information science, and also I'm excited about this new job because, without saying too much about it, it's going to be in a different department within a public library. And so, you know, I'm expanding my repertoire as well. So those are my qualifications. And I will say too, also having been a teacher as well, right? And having to be up against the literacy crisis for children and adults alike, whatever. So this morning, actually afternoon, I've been listening to a podcast about Norman the Psychopathic AI. I'm not joking. I'll link the podcast down below. And I have a lot of thoughts, right? As it relates to the internet literacy, digital literacy, media literacy, AI, etc. So, starting out with some statistics. The average American reads on a 6th grade level. I want to say the number is about 54% of Americans read below a 6th grade level. And it's no coincidence then. Shh. It's fine. Is it fine? It's mostly fine. It would be the thing that has like a breakable tip that falls on the floor, but it's fine. And in the podcast I was listening to, it said that 2/3 of Americans, which if you know math, that means 66%, use AI at least once a week. I want to say that was a statistic in the podcast. Again, verify for yourself. This is what we're talking about today. Oh, I have new glasses. Still have my tried and true, my favorite ones, but I actually wanted to get contacts, and then I was like, that's too much face. That's way too much face out in the world. And so not me looking like Lil Fizz. So I landed on these because I figured they're very like, I don't want to say neutral because the ones that I have are neutral. Like when I went to my last eye exam, my eye doctor was like, oh, your glasses are like the same color as your eyes, basically. Kind of. But I wanted something that just kind of like blended in, but that's the problem. Is that, and I've posted pictures of myself as a child. This is just my eye shape. I just have dark circles, and so you can really see them. So tell me if you like the glasses, but they're cool though. They have this detail and then like tortoiseshell on the sides, which I think is really cool. Back to the point. I think that it's no coincidence then that the majority of Americans are functionally illiterate. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, as a 6th grade teacher, if you don't know, I was a 6th grade English teacher for 2 years, and then I taught 7th grade English, and then I taught kindergarten reading. So when we talk about the spectrum, right, of like the fundamental skills of reading in the English language, all the way up to the reading level that the majority of Americans are working with, I've taught it. Recently, my husband and I got paperwork from our health insurance, and I was reading it and I was thinking, damn, if I didn't know how to read like I do, and this is something that I ask myself, right? Because I'm like, am I playing with a full deck? I have a bachelor's degree and I'm on my 2nd course of graduate study. I know how to read, but even I am like, I can always improve. because part of the act of reading is like when you look up words. Like me and my husband were just talking about this. He's a former English teacher as well and works in education and has gone to graduate school and graduated. He and I were just talking about how people were clowning Kai Cenat for looking up words and also checking the pronunciation. That's what you're supposed to do. Fucking, I find it concerning then, and no coincidence, that the majority of Americans are functionally illiterate. Oh, that was my point. Most medical paperwork, if I'm not mistaken, is written at an 11th grade level. I was an AP student when I was in 11th grade. I have graduated from high school. I still read and practice that skill on a regular basis. I can read at an 11th grade level. What if somebody can't? Are they gonna understand what this paperwork is? And it was dumbass paperwork too. It was basically saying that the insurance was gonna cover a procedure that I needed. Okay, thanks. But imagine you don't know how to read at that level and you're like, help. And here's the point, is that when you are not able to read at the level that is required to go through your day-to-day, you have to rely on other people. Or, and I see this happen a lot in social media comments, and I always say I'm gonna get out the comments, but they're just so, like, entertaining is not the word, they're scary, but there's just so much happening in there. Either you depend on other people to process information for you and simplify it down to the level that you are able to understand, because reading, and this is the part people don't get, reading is not just can you read the words on a page, it's can you analyze, can you compare, can you synthesize. If you can't do that, you're relying on another person, or you think that because you can read the words on a page that you are able to understand and synthesize and argue. And so that's why you go on comments on Instagram and people are arguing. People will challenge you with evidence you didn't say. They'll tell you you're wrong about something you didn't fucking say. And because people don't know how to make those arguments and also think, well, I use a cell phone every day, I read on my phone every day, therefore I'm literate, they also think that because I said so is evidence. That's the sixth, that's Common Core Standard 6.1. Can you cite evidence? And can you cite it correctly? Because people will also say, well, I read something once 100 years ago and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but I want to cite evidence. And so a lot of these people that are out here pretending to be smart and synthesizing information for people are doing so incorrectly. But something that my husband loves to say is, this sounds really good if you're stupid. This sounds really good if you're stupid. If you understand if you know how to break down an argument, you'll realize a lot of these people are not saying anything, but who cares, right? So I think also, so there's the thing about literacy, but then there's also the part where I feel like I might start talking slower because my glasses are off. So I'm trying to understand what's going on around me. But I think the other thing that goes along with illiteracy in AI is that people just fundamentally don't understand what AI is. A lot of AI, I think artificial intelligence is a misnomer. Something like ChatGPT is a search engine. It's not a search engine, excuse me. It's a large language model. A search engine, which is something like DuckDuckGo, which I recommend that you use, no longer Google as of this week of me recording this. Something like DuckDuckGo is going to pull up different sources for you to use, right? If you type in, when was the Civil War? It's not just going to give you an answer. The US Civil War, I should say. It's not just going to give you an answer. It's going to give you the Wikipedia page. It's going to give you history.com. It's going to maybe even give you a university, right? A large language model is going to scour the internet for, okay, United States, Civil War as a phrase, maybe war as a phrase. It's an amalgamation. Yeah, let's show that education. It's an amalgamation of different information. But notice how I said, let me correct myself. Let me say the American Civil War, because there are civil wars in different countries all the time. That was something fucking stupid I saw in comments recently, was that somebody said the Civil War, and somebody who was not American said which one, and they were like, there's only one. Here's where I need you to pick up what I am putting down. I was gonna say something about the makeup, that's not important right now. Walk with me. The people can't read, and therefore the people can't verify, okay? So, I saw somebody this was an altruistic action. Somebody somebody made an infographic, and I'm not going to link it because I disagree with this person. Well, I don't disagree with them, but we're using two different playbooks. Somebody made an infographic on Instagram this week in light of Google no longer being primarily a search engine, and it will function off of giving you AI results. And the person made a multi-page infographic about how do you know that sources are true or not. So, same example, the United States Civil War. Because I was awake in school, the United States Civil War I know was from 1861 to 1865. Abraham Lincoln was the president. It was about states' rights and slavery. He just wanted the Union to come back together, right? I know that. Let's say I didn't. The person was explaining, you know, there's different types of sources. You could use a primary source, which would be, for example, the Emancipation Proclamation. You could look at a newspaper from any time during the Civil War. Again, because I realized how I am situated, I took a class on the history of the Civil War when I was in college. My college was founded during the Civil War. So one of my homework assignments was to go into the archives of the college and look at primary source documents. But because of things like Project Gutenberg, whatever, we do have access to a lot of stuff pre-1900. So there's a primary source. Then you also have secondary sources, which would be something like a newspaper. Well, a newspaper would be a primary source, but that's not the fucking point. The fucking point is, and you see how for all the education in the world, I'm still getting confused, which is why we need to go back and check how much we know. The person was distinguishing what different types of sources are. They were saying, how do you know, even beyond what type of source it is, what was the author's purpose? That is another 6th grade reading standard. People can't do that. We're getting to my point. You know, and the person I think said like a news article, a blog post, and let's say a political speech are all going to have different purposes in conveying information. Yeah, cool. And then goes on to do all of that work. People aren't doing that, mamita. I'm sorry. Sorry is not the word. I'm enraged. I don't disagree with that person's approach. I think though that the people that need to know how to find out, how do you know as an adult that a source is reputable? They're not reading that because they can't even comprehend what you're saying. They're already typing a comment saying that, well, ChatGPT and Claude and Grok told me that you're wrong. I care very deeply about this as somebody who is a librarian in training because people need access to information. That is how we across time have made sense of the world. one of the final readings that I had for one of my courses this semester was from a librarian who was arguing about the state of libraries in the age of AI. And the person said, and this is something that people say to me all the fucking time when I say that I'm in school to be a librarian. Well, aren't you worried about libraries going away because of AI? Libraries have existed for 5,000 years. ChatGPT is from this decade. What the hell is it going to replace? But here's the problem. It's not just about the actual, like, the question is not what bothers me. And I think I can say a lot of librarians, but here's the thing. It's like the field is library and information science. So the people that are like beyond the computer programmers and the people that actually plug everything in, the functional side of everything, what are we using this for, falls into library and information science. It's this assumption that because something is brand new and seemingly does all of this thinking, what do I need to read a book anymore for? It's not thinking. Like I said, it's just sucking together a whole bunch of sources. And it's not a search engine. But more importantly, who convinced you that thinking for yourself is not important anymore? Why do you think that? Who convinced you of that? Because K through 12 education, at least in the United States, is compulsory. Is it doing a great job? There is money to be made from keeping people uneducated. I say this often that, and oh God, another thing with a pencil hitting something it's not supposed to, an uneducated populace is easy to control. Why do you think, for some reason, that ChatGPT is going to replace teachers, is going to replace books? What do you think that it does that a library would no longer exist? Here is then when we start getting into the tenets of library science when it comes to privacy and data and stuff like that. If you haven't seen my video on a future librarian's guide to, I want to say it was like internet privacy or something like that. But in that video, I had quoted somebody as saying that if something is free on the internet, you are the product. I remember, I remember as somebody who was born in the 1900s, as somebody who was born in the 90s, and thus has had, I have memories of dial-up internet. I myself, by the time that I was at an age to be doing like research for school, it was on the computer, but I remember teachers saying, don't use Wikipedia. That was like a thing, don't use Wikipedia. In response to Google not being primarily a search engine anymore, the Instagram page Depth of Wikipedia was posting different ephemera from Google over the years about how they wanted to democratize information, and the goal was to make information easily available, and it wasn't just about profit and blah, blah, blah. What a joke. So we used to, when I was a young lad, when I was a young warthog, there used to be this feeling that you need to go to the reputable sources and companies that don't have anything to gain from giving you information. That got flipped on its head because, again, the people are lost and they're falling for it. Companies like OpenAI and like Google have convinced all of us, y'all, that we can't trust each other for information and that we need to rely on them. And there's a lot of money in that. I said in that video that I just referenced that I made in December 2025, ChatGPT is not your friend. It is collecting data on you and then selling it. The same is true for Google. Google search, at least, is not about providing you the most accurate information. You can pay for ads to get your information put up at the top. And more often than not, when I'm saying information, it's not like when was the Civil War. It's like, let me sell you a book, or let me sell you a Confederate soldier's uniform, because that's probably something somebody wants to buy nowadays, right? And somehow along the way, the sheep got lost, feeling like, but why would I write an email myself? Or why would I look up when the Civil War was, when somebody can just tell me? You're giving your brain away. Most of what I've said in this video, again, is informed by both my time as an educator, and I've worked from kindergarten all the way up to college alumni with bachelor's degrees, if not people in grad school. It's come from like direct instruction education and also library science. The whole thing is a psyop. The whole thing is just, it's deeply concerning to me, because like in the podcast that I referenced at the beginning of this video, they talked about, I believe it's Alan Turing and the singularity, right? And that there is something in my eye. There will come a time where I was gonna say, just real quick, I don't like my glasses. There's gonna come a time where computers and digital intelligence, whatever the hell, become self-aware. And then in this podcast, like, it's a supernatural podcast, so they have to make things sound fantastical. Well, what if they overtake us? Why? Why would they do that when their function is to generate profit? They're not going to. They're not going to. However, the masses are not really making it hard to overtake us, right? For me, as somebody who is an English teacher, to hear that 2/3 of people use AI once a week, at least, that's spooky. That's spooky shit. And it's all on purpose, right? I think that's what it comes down to, right? Late stage capitalism, people trying to hoard as much money as they possibly can before the bubble bursts. And this is the thing that people always like come to, the point that they always think, I'm gonna show you when you bring up capitalism on the internet. Well, you're using an iPhone to post this. You're on Google's YouTube to post it. What pray tell else do you want me to use? For my part, when my iPhone stopped working because they, planned obsolescence? I've only read that word. They make themselves not work after a while. I got a refurbished phone. So kiss my ass. Before the bubble bursts, people want to make as much money as possible, and we are allowing them to, by feeling like, oh, okay, well, let me just ask ChatGPT to tell me what we want to eat for dinner. And I think that it's interesting too, like the way that the internet is just constantly picking apart Gen Z specifically, but also Gen Alpha. And when I say Gen Z, when I'm about to talk about Gen Z slang, I don't mean them stealing AAVE or queer lingo. I mean like things like saying chat, right? It's interesting how even as picture is it Squidward that's like looking through the window, or like DW up against the fence? That's how I feel as a millennial reading stuff like about Gen Z. But it's interesting from the outside looking in that chat went from meaning like a group chat to ChatGPT. We're already so isolated. And by design, you think that the internet would be like a great equalizer. And a lot of people, that's a function of library science, right? Rural libraries and internet access. Some people just don't have the internet at home, which, well, yes, it's a thing. You would think that this would put people in community with each other, right? Like back when I was a young warthog, some of my closest friends in my 20s I found on Twitter. Or like when I was a teenager, I was up and through Tumblr. But then even that same thing, like Tumblr got bought. Elon Musk, that's the sentence, with Twitter. And so it's flipped to where instead of, well, let me use Google to find the answer to when the American Civil War is, I gotta go on Wikipedia. Because I trust other people that are going to put in the effort of editing and writing with the goal of educating people more than I can trust whatever the hell is going on at Google, because they're funding wars. I fundamentally am an optimistic person. I don't think that I'm naive anymore in my 30s. When I think back to like my late teens and my 20s up until like my late 20s, yeah, I'm an optimistic person, and I implore anyone who has sat through this entire video. Here's the thing though, preaching to the choir, because if you're gonna sit through a 30-minute video, you have the attention span to read a book. But yeah, like switch your internet browser to DuckDuckGo, switch your search engine to DuckDuckGo. And unfortunately, too, these things cost money, right? Like for Christmas, I used my Christmas money to buy a 4 terabyte hard drive that was over $100. DuckDuckGo costs money. Proton Mail costs money instead of getting literal advertisements from Google in Gmail. But there's always time to start. I think that one thing that does make me excited is the way that people feel about data centers. I think things are swinging in a positive direction because folks realize that this isn't just like innocuous technology. I think data centers make people realize that there are direct, tangible effects for those who are not directly impacted, right? Because how do I look telling somebody who doesn't have clean drinking water anymore and their energy bill has skyrocketed? Yeah, data centers are bad for you. I mean, for people like myself, for example, who, as of right now, it's not hypothetical, but it's not directly impacting me. It's on purpose too, right? Because if we were to use the internet in a wholesome way, and talk to one another, we would realize like that's why they're trying to get rid of TikTok. And I hate, the last thing that I will say in this video is that I hate that bringing any of this up, people look at you like you're a conspiracy theorist. That's not. I can prove everything that I've said with data and articles. Who cares though, right? Who cares? So thanks for hanging out with me. I just like, here's the thing, in my head, I was gonna say this earlier, but I was like on a rampage. In my head, the glasses are like this big. I feel like them being not quite oversized, because the last pair that I got actually was oversized. Like they came down and touched my cheeks, and they were rounded. Oh, this is like actually the stuff that I care about. And I don't want to be giving all my information out and being like, yeah, I moved to this apartment. For example, right? My past videos. This is the stuff that I care about, that I think is important. And at this point, who cares? Like, I'm not arguing with y'all in the comments, by the way. I'm not. You could argue with each other until it gets crazy and then I'll just delete them. I'm not that person, wrong one. So it's been a lot. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in my next video.